Hi, this is Rick Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government. How are you doing today? While Washington, D.C. seems to be in a death match, a stranglehold based on the debt ceiling and all that, a couple of senators headed down to the border and really had some compelling things to say. Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma, who was a guest with me about 2 weeks ago talking about other things, traveled to the border in Arizona along with Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who was a Democrat, is now an independent. And they were talking about exactly what's happening at the border and offered some common sense solutions. So I wanted you to see a little bit about what's going on. This is the first clip that was taken last night.
We have lots of ideas. Do you want to talk about the work you're doing on asylum?
Yeah, we have to be able to clarify what asylum means. That's the biggest loophole that we have in the federal system right now, is that people coming across requesting asylum that we really know in law don't actually qualify for asylum, but they're being released from the country and sometimes waiting years to be able to get a decision to say, no, you don't qualify. But then there's all kinds of issues there where they've been there so long. So we've got to be able to clarify asylum. We've got to be able to make sure we take care of humanitarian issues in the meantime. But we've got to be able to make sure we're closing that loophole and providing clarity who does qualify for asylum and who doesn't.
It's important to know that right now, because of this loophole in the asylum law, it is cartels like the Sinaloa cartel who choose who comes into the country, through what venue, and when. It's not the American government choosing that. And that's why it's so important to close this loophole. We also need to ensure that we have adequate and appropriate, well-trained and appropriately managed border security. You all know that in the Tucson sector right now, the amount of fentanyl that's coming in between ports of entry, that's being smuggled in by the cartels, exceeds what is being caught at the port of entry in the Tucson sector. That's not a mistake. It is intentional that while resources are being diverted to processing individuals through the broken asylum system, that fentanyl is continuing to come in at a faster and faster pace. So part of what we must do legislatively is provide appropriate resources and technology for our CBP agents across the southern border to stop both the illegal flow of drugs, but also the flow of individuals who are security risks to our country.
Yeah, I mean, I think that puts it really in point blank range. Last week, I sat down with Representative Paul Gosar, who represents Yuma, Arizona, the exact area where Senator Lankford and Senator Sinema were at in this yesterday. And I just want to remind you of something he said, one of the stories he told. And it was about the problem the citizens, people who live in Yuma, are having because the healthcare system's overrun with illegal immigrants, people coming across the border and ending up in the public health system. Women who are pregnant and are ready to have a baby, you know how you kind of like to have your own obstetrician and you have all those preparations you make. Well, what's happening now is because there's no room in the hospitals in Yuma for women who are American citizens, people who are legally here in America, to be able to access their obstetrician. What's happening is they're being told, well, you have to go to Phoenix, 5-hour drive to Phoenix to have your child. Needless to say, none of us want to sit there and say, well, gee whiz, I'm going to go see an obstetrician who I don't know into a hospital system who I'm not familiar with. And heaven forbid something goes wrong and you're in a position where you need to be there for a longer period of time because of health concerns of the wife or the baby. Heaven forbid that happens, because that's a financial disaster beyond the human disaster. But people who plan to have their kids in Yuma, Arizona are now being shipped to Phoenix and say, hey, take a 5-hour ride up the road if you want to actually have your children. That's something you can't delay. That's something you have to deal with. That's a true human cost to the people who live on the border. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to anybody involved in this system. And oh, by the way, the taxes that are being paid now are astronomical to cover these costs. In the state of Illinois, for instance, they passed a bill that a few years back that said we're going to cover healthcare costs for illegal aliens. It was estimated to be a $4 million expenditure statewide in Illinois. They're now looking at it. The latest estimate is going to cost about $1.1 billion of taxpayer dollars in Illinois to provide health services for those who come across the border illegally. So we've got a big border problem, and it's pretty hard to dismiss it. What's more, we know that they're at the border. As Senator Sinema said, the fentanyl poisoning problem is massive. We're seeing people dying. Death rate in terms of drug overdoses is skyrocketing in this country, and that's directly a result of the Biden border chaos. I'm going to go to the next clip by them. This is directly at the border. They're going to talk a little bit about the asylum problem, and which is one small it's a part of the problem, but it's a part of the problem I think we might be able to get to an answer on. And we'll talk a little bit about what Sinema says at the end about pathway to citizenship, because that's a separate problem. So just pay attention to the asylum problem.
You talked about asylum reform and seeking for asylum in the right way. What do you think the right way would be?
Well, it's kind of a long answer, but one of the things that we've talked about is creating pathways and rules around applying for asylum that are pretty strict and have consequences. So right now, like we said, someone can show up in the middle of the desert and when apprehended by a Border Patrol agent can say, I'm here to claim asylum, and there's no repercussion for them. That is not the appropriate way to seek asylum. So there are a number of ideas of first applying in another safe third country before coming to the U.S., making sure you have an appointment, doing some initial interviews early on to see if there's a basic qualification. Right now, only about 10% of the people who are claiming asylum will ultimately be granted asylum. The other 90% are migrants who are coming, some for good reasons, but don't actually qualify for asylum. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is to raise the standard so that we're questioning folks sooner, getting more information earlier before they get onto American soil. And so we can tell them, yes, you have a chance of qualifying, or no, you're never going to qualify. You don't meet the threshold. Those are some things that we can do to actually help reduce the flow and send a consequence regime so the cartels know that they can no longer use this as their money-making scheme.
And again, this is not a radical concept. In Europe, in Canada, multiple places, they deal with asylum issues and trying to be able to get clearer definitions of asylum. We're just looking to be able to get clear definitions so that everyone knows who does qualify, who does not qualify. People are coming from literally Uzbekistan. Last time I was in Yuma, there were more people from Uzbekistan that had crossed that week than there was from El Salvador that week.
That was in January.
Yeah, and so they literally flying to 7 different countries to be able to travel, to be able to get here and then claim asylum. We asked the first question, why here? If you travel into Canada, if they say, did you come to the United States, did you request asylum there first? And you say no, they would say that you don't qualify in that. You can't just pick and choose on this. People may want to come to the United States. It's the greatest country in the world. I understand why the people want to be able to come. But we need to create legal pathways to be able to do that and not just have exceptions to the rule that you can work around.
That's right. The big challenge right now is that because there is no consequence regime, there are no consequences for coming in either through the app and lining up or through the border regions. Folks who have no chance of getting asylum are just coming in and then disappearing into the interior of the country. That's dangerous for national security. It's also not fair to those individuals because they will not have a path to citizenship in the future, right? So the changes that we want to make are about creating a legal and orderly pathway for those who will qualify. And then for those who don't, letting them know before they make the trek to the U.S. that this is not a path for them. Thanks all.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, I think that, let me tell you what the biggest takeaway I have on this. First of all, dealing with essentially what they described was the Trump remain in Mexico policy. That's what they described in terms of the solution. Let's interdict people before they get in our country. Let's deal with it. Let's deal with it and determine whether or not they're actually eligible for asylum or not. And those who aren't, we say, well, you really need to go to the government of Canada or the government of Mexico or whatever country they're coming through and say, and get asylum from them, because the asylum claim isn't just a freebie into America. And oh, by the way, you have these court dates that are set 4 years out for asylum seekers, and 95%, that was the number I saw last, 95% don't show up for the court date. And those who do are denied a high percentage of time. So we've got a problem. The whole asylum system is being abused, as being abused by the cartels as a means of doing the single thing that it's actually become their most lucrative, profit-making venture, human trafficking. And the asylum claims and our failure to actually enforce our own laws and have the Biden administration do what they're supposed to do, the failure of the Biden administration to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, which was very effective in stopping the flow of illegals across our border. The fact that they failed to do that it's on them. They have created this crisis. But I want to talk about one other thing about this, because I think it's the most instructive thing. Here in Washington, D.C., Republicans and Democrats seem to be, and I know I feel this way, we're at each other's throats on almost everything. And it was refreshing for me to see two senators who may not have the same exact big picture solution to a problem working together for a small picture solution to the temporary crisis. And and joining together and saying, this is a crisis we can deal with that everybody should be able to agree with, and coming together to try to create that kind of bill, because truth be told, getting a massive bill won't pass, and it'll just end up falling apart over arguments about asylum, about whether or not anybody, basically pathway to citizenship and the like. But getting our current crisis under control by denying people entry who do not qualify for asylum, even to be considered for asylum, is common sense. It's common sense. It's something that should be able to be done. And sometimes you have to just do the common sense stuff in order to make certain to secure, put the Band-Aid on the bleeding wound, before you get surgery to fix the whole problem. And we can disagree on the problem fixes. I think our system is way too open. We need to change chain migration. There's a whole series of things we need to do. We need to make certain that people aren't importing people to take U.S. jobs. That's something we have to do. So there's a lot of elements to our immigration policy that are messed up that we have to fix. But right now, this is putting a Band-Aid on the wound. And I commend Senator Lankford and Senator Sinema for having the guts to actually go out and propose a small solution that solves part of the problem, rather than throwing your hands up and saying there's nothing we can do because we can't solve the amnesty problem. Well, guess what, folks? If we're waiting to solve the amnesty problem to get comprehensive immigration reform done, we're waiting 4 or 5 years, and at the rate of about 200,000 entrants a month. 200,000 entrants a month is 2.4 million a year. 5 years, that's 15. That's 12 million people. Not a good. 12 million people is just to put it in perspective, is 3% of the U.S. population right now. Adding 3% illegal immigrants because we can't deal with the problem dealing with amnesty and dealing with people who are claiming a political amnesty is really stupid. And so let's do what we can do now, and we'll worry about fixing the system once we get a president in who actually has a desire for us to have a southern border. Once again, this isn't just a problem at the border. This is a problem that's affecting us nationwide. Eric Adams from New York City keeps complaining because they got 4,200 immigrants last month into New York City. 4,200. Over 200,000 came across the border, and there's another 100,000 that came across that we didn't get. We're gotaways. I mean, and he's complaining about he can't handle 4,200 in the largest city in the United States, is having problems because the liberal communities who voted him into office and who keep voting with liberal politicians like Chuck Schumer into office are complaining because they want to use their school gymnasiums to house these people, and they don't want them, rightfully so, don't want them in their school gymnasiums. Well, guess what? Vote for people who support open immigration and have a sanctuary city. Bear the consequences, because Our immigration problem is because people in New York elect Chuck Schumer. People in New York elect people like AOC. So don't come and complain about, gee whiz, it's over 4,200 people is overwhelming. When small cities are dealing with hundreds of people every single day, cities of 900 are dealing with hundreds of people a day. Those are systems that are overrun. Cities that don't even have hospitals, don't have health clinics, are having to deal with hundreds of people every day. Folks, we got to get this fixed. The Biden administration has no inclination to do so. I'm really happy that Senator Lankford, Senator Sinema came together to draw attention to this and really talk about a narrow focused approach that should force reasonable people to come together and just do that and force the Biden administration to actually do their job and protect our border. This is Rick Manning. I'm going to look at a couple comments. Let's see. Let's see. Make a town for them. Don't put them with us. Well, okay. Well, let's talk about that. That's Wanda. I appreciate the comment. We have 5 million illegal immigrants to come across our border this past 2.5 years. That's a town that's bigger than Los Angeles. Just to put, now, truthfully, there's probably, because some of them did get sent back, you're probably looking at about 2 million, but still, that's Los Angeles is just over 3 million people. So you're talking about a town the size of Chicago. So you make a town for just the people who came illegally across the border since Biden became president, and you need to build Chicago to put them in a town. So that's how big this problem is. Barbara Jordan, I think that all Democrats should have to pay for all the illegals. The Democrats in Congress and Senate should not receive a salary until they're sent back where they came from, and Biden and the problems all need to be impeached. Barbara, I have to tell you that we've had a petition to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas up for quite a while. Majority leader majority whip of the House, Tom Emmert, came out urging that Mayorkas be impeached. Mayorkas is the head of Department of Homeland Security. If you're interested in taking a look at that and signing on and giving it to friends, I'd encourage anybody on this broadcast to go to getliberty.org, getliberty.org, our website, and it's right there on the front page. Click on it, and you can send a message to your members of Congress and share it with your friends. And that's, while we're doing this, it's really helpful. Anybody who wants to subscribe, if you subscribe, so you can get these notifications when we're doing these. We do put stuff every day up, and we have lots of great different types of content. And also, if you happen to think about it and you want to hit, do stars and things like that, stars actually do help. And with the people, as we have people tuning into these broadcasts, it's really helpful to have people putting the stars in. It's a small donation to the organization, but it allows us to continue doing this kind of thing. And quite honestly, it's an affirmation that these are worth doing. Now I'm gonna pick this one because I kind of took offense. Jax, send them all to Californication. I'm from California. Okay, California has lots of illegal aliens in it. And the truth be told, lots of them are going there all by themselves. So it's but having family that lives in California, they have enough problems. But because of California's laws and the large immigrant communities in California, you have, that's kind of natural selection, where if you can go to a place like Los Angeles County or Los Angeles City also, but let's say just LA. I'm going to tell a story, okay? And I don't want to waste too much of your time, but I think you'll find this interesting. Grew up in California, went to the University of Southern California, which is in south of the City Hall. Used to be called South Central LA, but it really isn't South Central LA. To the immediate east of USC was East LA. To the south was was the where blacks lived, African Americans lived. And so you had this kind of interesting kind of polyglot. And I went back there to do on a project a few years ago, about 20 years ago. And the entire landscape had changed. They're effectively places driving south of SC, places that were like Compton. We all know straight out of Compton. Well, Compton and just north are largely Hispanic cities now. And I was shocked to find out that my expectations on demographics in LA have changed. The other thing I was shocked is when I went across the LA River into East LA, they didn't have signs up on their car dealerships that say "Se habla español." They had signs up saying "We speak English," because the majority, the population overwhelmingly didn't speak English, and the car dealers were Spanish speakers. It was like buying a car in a Spanish-speaking nation. That was 20 years ago, and that's before the massive influx that's occurred over the last 20 years. So I can only imagine how it is right now. But the fact of the matter is we've got a massive problem. We have a massive illegal alien problem. And it's something that the Democrats are attempting to break the system. They're trying to erase the border. And I would encourage you to go to getliberty.org and hit and just take action, urging Congress to impeach Mayorkas. I hope this video has been helpful to you. I hope that you learned something, and hopefully it gave you some hope that when Kyrsten Sinema and James Lankford can join together, two people with different backgrounds, different political parties can join together and say, we need to find a common solution, come up with a common solution and a common sense solution to part of the problem. That's a tremendous, tremendous affirmation that, yes, this system can be made to work. And I want to thank the senators, both of the senators, for their efforts to try to find solutions rather than just throwing rocks. And with that, I'm going to close out. Thank you for watching, and we will be with you tomorrow.